Hello everyone and welcome back to another video from Relative Security. In this we will be discussing the two more controls associated with the critical security controls from CIS. And the first one that we are going to discuss is inventory and control of software assets. If you remember, the first control that we discussed in the last video was inventory and control of enterprise assets. Here we are not talking about enterprise, we're talking about software assets. So the CIS control emphasizes the active management of all software, including operating systems and applications on the network. This involves inventorying, tracking, and correcting software to ensure that only authorized software is installed and allowed to execute. The basic goal is to prevent the installation or execution of unauthorized and unmanaged software, enhancing overall security. So why we have to make sure that we inventory and control the software assets? Because a comprehensive software inventory is fundamental for thwarting the attacks, as attackers consistently seek vulnerable software for remote exploitation. So to make sure that the software is up to date, updating and patching software will be the key defense. But without a complete inventory, enterprises can't identify vulnerable software or potential licensing violations. So the first point that we have to make sure is that we have an updated software inventory, just like we have an updated asset inventory in the asset management case. We need to make sure that we have an updated software inventory about which includes all the software, including applications and operating systems that are being used in the enterprise. Even in the absence of a patch, a complete software inventory will help guard against the known attacks. This is also crucial when dealing with zero-day exploits, where unknown vulnerabilities lack patches. Temporary mitigations can be applied to ensure that until the patch is released, if the attacker tries to exploit certain vulnerability, those extra temporary mitigation measures that have been put in place make sure that the attacker does not get successful. Managing software assets is vital to identify unnecessary security risks, such as default software creating potential vulnerabilities. It is also essential to inventory, understand, assess, and manage all software connected to an enterprise infrastructure. So what do we do to make sure that this control is implemented within the enterprise? The first thing that we have to use is the allow lists. Software inventory, we have already discussed that it should be up to date. Second is the supported software authorization. Even though the software that is being used is supported by the vendors and it's up to date, is it authorized within on your own environment? Is it allowed, or has it been verified and validated by your cybersecurity team? If there is any unauthorized software that is being used within your environment, what is the policy around that, right? So the implementation of allow listing involves using commercial allow listing tools, policies, or application execution tools within the anti-malware suites and popular operating systems. So if you see the modern endpoint security suites and certain major operating systems, they include the feature of allow listing, and commercial solutions often bundle anti-malware, anti-spyware, personal firewall, host-based IDS and IBS, along with the application allow and block lists. So these endpoint security solutions can assess the name, file system, location, or the cryptographic hash of an executable to determine its allowance on the protected machine. The most effective tools offer customizable allow lists based on the executable path, hash, or regular expression, matching, and some even provide a function for defining rules for the execution of specific software for certain users and times of the day. So the the tools are present and are available in the industry which can be used to make sure that the only and only allowed software is running within your enterprise. And if there is any unauthorized software that has to be used, so these customizable tools and these customizable rules can be used to give an authorization, maybe one-time authorization or a time-bound authorization for any unauthorized software that should be used in your organization. Another control is related to the data protection, where the rule emphasizes that the processes and technical controls should be developed to identify, classify, and securely handle, retain, and dispose of the data. So, the evolving nature of the data, extending beyond the enterprise borders to the cloud, home-based and end-user devices, and global online services, underscores the critical importance of data privacy. Enterprises must recognize that privacy involves not only encryption, but also the proper use and management of the data throughout its lifecycle. Managing data in compliance with international regulations is particularly challenging for multinational enterprises. Attackers, once inside an enterprise infrastructure, often prioritize finding and exfiltrating data. Enterprises may be unaware of data outflows due to inadequate monitoring. Attacks on network, physical theft of devices, and breaches involving service providers or partners are very common now. Loss of control over sensitive data can have severe business implications and may result from poorly understood data management rules and user error. Adopting data encryption, a regulatory requirement for controlled data, can mitigate the risk of data compromise. So how do we manage this? How do we ensure that the data that we are using stays protected? The enterprises, they should establish a comprehensive data management process encompassing a framework, classification guidelines, and requirements of the data protection, handling, retention, and disposal. So this framework should become a base document that should always be referred when there is a new process that you want to introduce. If there is a new procedure that you want to introduce around that data, all the guidelines should be extracted from this framework to ensure that the data is protected and handled and retained according to the framework. A data breach process should be integrated into the incident response, compliance, and communication plans as well. So, in addition to this, all data is not equal. There are different sensitivity levels that should be defined for the data. And to determine these data sensitivity levels, enterprises must catalog key data types and assess their criticality to the organization. This analysis forms the basis for an overall data classification scheme, often using symbols like sensitive, confidential, and public. So who decides that which data is critical? The data owner. We can always ask the data owner about the criticality of a particular set of data. How important is the integrity of the data? How important is the availability and confidentiality of the data? And based on that, you can define these labels and mark them as sensitive, confidential, or public. And once you have identified those, based on that, you can define what level of encryption, what level of retention, and what kind of rules should be applied for a particular set of data for the data loss prevention. So once this data inventory is done, a data inventory or mapping is done, the software accessing the data should be identified should be able to identify different sensitivity levels and the corresponding enterprise assets. Ideally, the networks should be segmented to group assets with similar sensitivity levels, with firewalls controlling the access and user rules applied based on the business needs. There are many different encryption and data loss prevention tools available within the market. Those should be used, and based on the sensitivity and the classification that has been done within the organization, those classifications should be used within the data loss prevention tools to make sure that there is a enhanced monitoring of the outflow of the data to ensure that there is no data exfiltration. And even if there is, it should be detected early on, and there should be some remedial measures taken right away. So these are the two controls that have been discussed today. One was the ensuring that you have the updated list of software inventory. The second is the data protection. Thank you so much. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and share this video. Thank you so much.